Good day. My name is Michael Smith.
And I'm Chris Morosky, and we're the founding directors of Pathways School. Today we'd like to share with you about our school and also some of the courses and events that we're offering this year, some thoughts about the future.
Before we get into the details of the courses we're going to be offering this year, we just want to speak a little bit to the concerns people have, especially the challenges we face as basically a species in these challenging and changing times. So Chris, where do you think things are heading?
We live during the most dramatic time in the history of our species, and we have enormous potential to create health and well-being and peace in our society, or to create more death and destruction. This is not a bad time, it's an uncertain time. We have to move past that uncertainty and make some hard choices, and then we need to act on them. Think of our society like a person with a chronic illness. He takes medication to alleviate symptoms, but the medication does very little, if anything, to remedy the true cause of the illness. And similarly, we as a society look to recycling, alternative energy, carbon offsets, and government rhetoric to alleviate our anxieties over the true cause, of which is our overconsumption and our artificiality. The person won't become truly well until he builds his immune system by leading a healthy lifestyle. Avoid excess sugar, caffeine, nicotine, get plenty of rest, lots of exercise, eat healthy. Healthy mind, healthy heart, healthy relationships. Similarly, our society won't be healthy until we live in balance with the land. It's simple, really, but fear, distraction, and habit paralyze us. Mike, your First Nations ancestors have some teachings about this.
Well, yeah, actually, a relative of mine once said that we're the children of the sun and sun's end. And that speaks to the experience we have when we tend to think lots about the end of things. You know, we tend to obsess, create fears about, how things could come apart. I mean, every generation has that story, if it's the Cold War, if it's Y2K, if it's 2012. So, it's pretty natural for us to find ourselves there. As our focus turns to the ends of things, it's easy for us to think of the end of what gives us sustenance, what gives us a sense of safety, and that makes us fear even more, what other people may do. So again, we find ourselves facing this very strong dilemma in ourselves that brings up a lot of fear. It's easy these days to imagine some hard times coming ahead, and I have some of those feelings too, which is why I spend as much time as I do working on these kind of skills, working with growing food, and all of the other endeavors I have to face the changing times that we're all going to face together. I also believe that these are some of the most transformative times in our history, and it's also a great opportunity in the development of our species to actually grow up a little bit and learn to share this planet. My concerns and what I choose to focus on are solutions. If some bad things are going to happen, it's more important to me to focus on the solutions to those things, or maybe even more importantly, how to be with myself, with the people around me, as a person in those situations, so that we can come through them together. One of the central themes in the Pathways School is how to be with change and how to be with difficulty. And maybe on a more spiritual level, we have the opportunity here to prepare ourselves and in a way surrender ourselves to a whole new way of living. So Chris, what do you feel is the most important place for people to start?
We begin with a person's greatest concerns. Most people realize that if there was some disaster that forced them to leave their homes and head for the hills, they would have a hard time surviving. However, the greatest concern may be that their lives just simply are lacking meaning. They're on a treadmill of work, buy stuff, work, buy stuff, work, buy more stuff. They have a sense that there is more to life, but they aren't quite sure how to achieve it. The first step, whatever your concern, is to simplify. 2 days of living directly with the land brings about a new perspective on things. A season of living close to the earth brings about a great clarity of mind and peacefulness of spirit. From this new foundation, people are able to make wise decisions. Mike, what would you say to a person's fears about the future?
Well, with respect to fear, Chris, I always suggest people start with basically imagining a worst-case scenario. or at least some kind of situation that still will support life. That may sound extreme, but that's just my nature. My elders always tell me that if you see a fear, move towards it. Try and make it your friend. So I like to start people off with some fundamental things like the skills for emergency preparedness. If we're going to be bugging in or bugging out, there are certain skills we need, certain supplies we need to handle any kind of situation where infrastructure happens to fail or Mother Nature decides to give us a little bit of a nudge to go and be somewhere else for a while. After that, I focus on the skills that people would usually refer to as wilderness survival skills, the things you need to know how to obviously survive in the bush if you're in a car accident, somewhere off on the highway, you're backpacking and you get lost, things like that. And those are some fairly fundamentally useful things to know. Once people know how to handle all the scary stuff, then I set them off on what I would call a two-part journey, or a two-sided journey. So part one of this journey I often refer to as teching down, and this is when we start relying on less and less gear, and gradually over time learning to replace each element of our gear, the things that we need, by learning to make them from scratch. Learning to make all of your tools, your shelter, your clothing, making all of these things from what you would find or be able to access in the natural world, that's a pretty big challenge, and it takes most people about 3 years. Part two is even more challenging. Another relative of mine, this very wise old First Nations woman, used to always say, the best place to store your extra food is in your neighbor's mouth. So the second part of this journey is really about learning to cooperate, learning to share, learning to put the needs of the people around you above your own. My hunter-gatherer relatives have a saying that to be alone is death. So when we think of survival situations, it's really, really vital to not just imagine ourselves going off as the lone wolf, but trying to find ways to, again, cooperate, to come together, to share needs, or getting our needs met, and to share the resources that we carry. And this is also a really big part of the Pathways program. So I suppose my philosophy is really about shifting our consciousness from wilderness survival to wilderness living, from enough for me thinking to enough for everybody thinking. So Chris, do you think that wilderness survival, as the way it's usually taught, is really that practical of a solution?